With Cruella releasing in theaters and on Disney Plus Premium this weekend, it seemed like the perfect time to stop and rank all 5 101 Dalmatians films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, today I am joined by a very special guest, my friend Rachel Wagner. She loves to talk about animation way too much. Rachel, tell us, wait, I'm pointing the wrong way. You're over there. Rachel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm a film critic and podcaster, and I have a channel, Rachel's Reviews, where we do tons of animation coverage, including monthly Talking Disney episodes, and we have obscure animation that we talk about. It's really fun. And then I also have the Hallmarkies podcast, which I cover all kinds of fun Hallmark movies. So I cover a lot of different ground.
So be sure to head on over to her channel's podcast, all that fun stuff. The links will be down below in the description. Here's how this works. Basically, I averaged my ranking of these 5 movies, Rachel's ranking of these 5 movies, with the Rotten Tomatoes ranking based off their score, and we came up with a master list. We're going to talk about the movies in the order of that master list, and we'll say kind of where we had one higher, where we had one lower, where we agree, where we disagree, and all of that fun stuff. Be sure to join us down below in the comments section. Let us know your ranking of the 5 101 Dalmatians films, as well as what opinions of ours do we need to rethink. I'd love to hear from you, and let's get started. Coming in last place is 102 Dalmatians, the sequel to the remake, and no matter how you look at it, I kind of view it as just an incredibly lame film with a bad concept. The idea of like Cruella de Vil going through like psychological therapy to rewire her brain in regards to puppies. It feels like they took inspiration from A Clockwork Orange and just squished it into the 101 Dalmatians mythology. And then they decided Cruella de Vil is the sole element that people care about with these movies. So just push her so far front and center that it feels like it completely loses the charm of the franchise. And so by far, this is my least favorite of the bunch. Rachel, how about you?
There was a time when I actually preferred this over the remake, just because it was so weird. And sometimes I just like weird movies.
It is weird. It is certainly weird.
But not anymore now. It would be my least favorite as well. I think that it has a lot of fun performance from Glen Close, but you just need a little bit more than that for a movie.
Right. And every time I rewatch this one, and I only rewatch it because I have this channel and talk about the live action remakes and everything like that, I'm just confused as to who they thought their target audience was, or that would it's going for like such slapstick humor while having this concept about therapy and treatment that like my 7-year-old's not going to understand what's going on in this movie. And so it's just kind of a movie that I just fundamentally picked the totally wrong direction to take the entire thing.
Yeah, and it's just not very cute. And you kind of need the cute puppies and more of the animals than you get in this movie. Exactly.
So Rotten Tomatoes had it last. You had it last. I had it last. We all agree it's the worst of the bunch.
Yeah.
In 4th place, 101 Dalmatians, the remake. Now, this one is actually one I actually enjoy quite a bit, largely because my family gets a kick out of it. The cast, of course, is a ton of fun. Glen Close is the one that everybody talks about, but everyone's having fun in it. And you even have like Dr. House as one of the thieves inside the film. Nice little touch. And as you move into the back half of the film, whereas the original animated film kind of goes in a heist direction, this one goes full slapstick. And so we were watching it with my son last year. We get to a point in time and he goes, "Dad, this is the point in time where it turns into Home Alone with dogs." And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good way to describe it. So it's in 4th place on this list. But for me, I actually have it at number 2 on my list. Rachel, how about you? What's your take on this one?
I have it at number 4 also, and there's a lot of good reasons why it feels like Home Alone with dogs, and that's because it was written by John Hughes, who also wrote Home Alone. And I think that Glen Close is really great. She's a lot of fun as Cruella. But I really think it was a mistake for them to not have the puppies talk, because you lose so many characters in the original film. And so I think I would have done that. And it just gets so slapsticky, which was like the thing. If you were going to have a comedy, if you were going to have a family comedy in the 90s, you had that kind of slapstick violence. That was just a thing. And I don't know, it's my number 4.
Yeah, maybe somewhat also what ties into this one is that my wife Jennifer, she went to Disneyland or Disney World in the late 90s, and one of the rides there, or one of the deals they had, was you could put your dad in 101 Dalmatians. So she has all these fond memories of her dad reenacting the bicycle sequence from this movie. So there's a bunch of nostalgia that factors into kind of where I place this one a little bit. But it's a movie that, like, it's not blowing any minds or anything like that. It's just harmless family entertainment that leans heavily in the slapstick direction. And when you have little kids, that goes a long, long way. In third place, 101 Dalmatians 2. Rachel, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, so I had never seen this one. I tend to not really like these cheapquels very much, but definitely in the world of the cheapquels, this is definitely one of the better ones. Like, it actually has a decent story. I thought the idea of Martin Short as this artist who's painting spots kind of being enticing to Cruella was pretty fun. And the idea of Patch feeling lonely and forgotten in a family of 101 is understandable. And I think kids will be able to relate to his character. And so it's got a great voice cast, Barry Bostwick, Jason Alexander, Martin Short. So overall, I was pleasantly surprised, and maybe low expectations helped on this one.
And if you guys don't know, in the past, Rachel and I have discussed several of these kind of franchises that have direct-to-video sequels. Aladdin, Lion King, you can check those out right somewhere. It'll be up on the screen. I'll let you know over there. And so, yeah, some of them are really bad, and some of them, they're actually decent. You can see the cheapness in the production. Okay, fair enough. But they have some interesting ideas in them. This one, to me, felt like they were trying to do 2 different movies at once. And so it just had a lot of plot. And it's like, it felt like you could have the Cruella and the artist plot line, and then you have, was it Patch, on his kind of side quest. It felt like those could have been,
that's fair.
Each one of those could have kind of stood on their own. The return of Cruella DeVille, as well as, hey, let's send someone into the city. He meets another dog, and then everyone else wants to track him down and find him. You know, the family moving out to a farm. Like, there's a lot of plot in that just inherently works. And so that was kind of my big takeaway, especially watching it so close after the original one, that one of the things I thought worked really nicely about it is that it's such a clean story. That's just so linear with the way that it flows, and then establishing each of the pup. We don't want to get ahead of myself talking about that one, but it's just such a clean storyline. And then this one, it's like, hey, we're moving, and we've got this movie or TV star puppy or dog, and then we have Cruella getting out of jail, and then there's a painter, and then it's like, okay, there's a lot of moving parts in here. So I thought it was for a direct-to-video sequel, it was fine. It was enjoyable enough. It was harmless. There wasn't anything about it that was like, oh my goodness, this is just terrible. It just also felt like kind of episodic. It felt like it was, it felt like a couple of episodes of a 101 Dalmatians TV show. That's what I say. What I say by that. And so for me, I had this one at number 4 on my list. But I think one thing that's going to be a recurring theme, especially as we move into this next one, this middle section, they're all pretty close, but they're really weird to compare. Yeah. Because when you're comparing a direct-to-video animated sequel that came 40 years later to a $200 million movie about Cruella, that's a weird comparison. Yeah.
No, it's true. They have their strengths, their weaknesses. But if I were to pick which one I would want to watch again, I would pick this one because the puppies are talking and I like their characters and they're sweet. So that's why I would pick it.
And I probably have my own little biases towards live action type stuff that I just tend to resonate a little bit more with it. In second place is our new release, Cruella. And this is an interesting one to me because it's such a slick production with a bunch of creativity in the way things were handled and designed. Emma Stone, of course, is going to give a lively performance as such a vibrant character. But then at the same time, for me, the central premise is just a little bit hard to swallow. Because inherently, the whole point of Cruella de Vil is that she's a narcissistic sociopath filled with vanity that wanted to turn puppies into a coat. Which is, it's tough to root for a character like that. So when you have a movie designed to position her as this punk rock underdog that we're rooting for her to tear down the establishment, that's a little bit tough for me to buy into. But what's fascinating to me is a bunch of people on Twitter are just loving this movie. A bunch of people, a bunch of my movie critic friends that all seem to be in their mid-20s are just eating this movie up. And that's just kind of fascinating me. Where did you fall on this one?
I give it a mild recommendation. I definitely agree with you that the whole premise is very flawed, and it's just, I think they did just about as good a job as you could do. Whether that should be done is another question.
Exactly. That's a good way to phrase it. Like, wow, you did a great job at this. I don't know if you should have done it, but you did a good job at trying to do something very odd.
Yeah, it's very strange, and it becomes kind of this battle of who's the most evil, kind of, and I think that's why it mildly works between Emma Thompson and Emma Stone. That's a lot of fun. The fashion's really fun, and you have some of these heist scenes that can be fun, to use that word again, but it's also kind of repetitive, and they also, some of the winks back to the original work, and some of them are like, oh, give me a break. And then some
of them I didn't think even made any sense.
Yeah.
Like in the post-credits scene, I didn't think does that even make any sense? Am I missing something?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't quite get it either. And then they also have like music cues that are, oh, that's fun. But then other ones were like, oh, that was so on the nose. So I don't know. It was a mixed bag, but in the world of Rotten Tomatoes, I did go fresh. It was okay to me.
Like I sat on this one for a full week trying to decide where I fell, because I respected aspects of it. As we said, it's about as good as you could do. Of these Disney live action remakes, it actually feels like they brought some creativity and some energy into it, not just a shot for shot remake. But at the same time, did I actually get invested in the story? Could I ever actually root for this character? No. And it felt like, you touched on this a little bit, but it felt like the way that they make you root for Cruella de Vil is like, how do just introduce someone that's even more vile. So just by some mild comparison, you're like, well, at least Cruella de Vil's not her. And it's like, okay, but does it make her remotely a good person or on the right path? And the movie even kind of knew this. They have... Was that Jasper? It was the one that's like almost confronting her a little bit about it, like, hey, you're bad. So the movie knows that it's we're rooting for someone we shouldn't be rooting for, and so I could never get over that hump fully. And so I started filming my review, and I hadn't nailed down exactly what my score would be. In my reviews, I have one score for two different scores that I give. So basically, what I tried to do is split them. One is slightly thumbs up, and the other one is slightly thumbs down. It's right on that line that Rotten Tomatoes doesn't let you choose. So I haven't even submitted my score to Rotten Tomatoes because I'm still contemplating.
Yeah, if there was just like just barely fresh, like, or middle, whatever's the middle between a Rotten Tomato and fresh tomato, this would be it. But yeah, like, and the whole thing with Roger and Anita was weird. I was like, what are they trying to do with those characters? I didn't quite get it. And so I don't know. It was interesting. It was different. It was weird. Sometimes I like weird movies, and I didn't hate it. I just was right in the middle on it. I can't think of another way to say it.
So the thing that frustrated me is I kept thinking, if this was just some standalone story, I think it works a lot better. If I don't know who she becomes, if I don't know that she's going to kill puppies, then it's actually kind of a clever script with twists and turns and style. But then at the same time, the whole reason I'm watching the movie is because I know who she is.
Yeah, and also maybe if it wasn't Disney, because I think we're watching this thinking, like, even though it's PG-13, like, who is this made for? Yeah. I mean, it's not going to appeal. It's going to be boring, I think, to kids.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't show it to our kids, and we don't plan on showing it to our kids. And they, like, that's what we said. Like, they would be bored if they watched this. They wouldn't know what was going on. They
don't want to watch
themes. And,
a Devil Wears Prada kind of ish sort of story. Like, I just don't think they'd be interested in that. And
so one of the, as I kind of alluded to earlier, but it just seems like a movie designed for 25-year-olds. I said in my review, it's like designed for kids. If you were a scene kid in 2010 and really into Hot Topic. And 101 Dalmatians, like, this is probably the movie designed perfectly for you. And you get on Twitter, and a bunch of our friends that are in their mid-20s, they are loving this movie. Yeah. And it seems like a lot of other people are like, what? I don't get it. Like, what? This is a weird concept.
It does feel like it's kind of made for the sort of Nightmare Before Christmas, Disney-bound kind of Hot Topic kind of crew.
Yeah, and that's something different for Disney. That's interesting. And as we both said, like, it's well made. The thing that we're trying to do, they accomplished. I just don't know if that's a thing that I could ever get on board with.
Yeah, and if Disney were asking my advice, I mean, I would way rather watch movies like this than where they're experimenting, trying something different, than I would watch shot for shot remake The Lion King. No, thank you.
Yeah, and that's maybe a good note to end on. As much as we're voicing our frustrations and confusion as to this project, you did something interesting. It was an experiment. It was a risk. And the intrigue of that is worth existing, at least in my mind.
So I had it at 3 in my ranking.
I had it at 3 on my ranking. Rotten Tomatoes had it at number 2 on their ranking. And because me and you split on the live action remake versus 100 Dalmatians 2, we each had one of those at number 4. Then that's what slipped this one into the second spot. The way math works, it won by not being one of the worst.
Congratulations, Cruella.
But easily coming in first place is the original 101 Dalmatians. Rachel, tell us, why is this a classic?
I think it's one of my favorite animated films from Walt Disney Animation Studios because I think that it balances tone so well. It's at times very tense. It's at times emotional when they're like crawling through the snow trying to get home, and when the puppies are stolen. But then you also have tense scenes like when they're getting onto the moving van. That's one of my favorites. And you see Cruella, and it's like plop, 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 the water because they're all covered with soot. That's a great scene. There's so many other great scenes. I think they use Cruella just enough because really the puppies are with Horace and Jasper most of the time. And so they don't overuse Cruella so that she becomes kind of grating. It's just enough. And they also had an artistry to this that I think is really special. It was one of the first films where they used what's called the Xerox process. And it's such a perfect process for this movie because it's all black and white. And you have all of these spotted puppies. So perfect. And so I think it's really unique visually, but it's also just really sweet. I love Roger and Anita. Their love story is really fun. It even has some fun music to it. So it's one I really enjoy.
Yeah, what stuck out to me rewatching it is how it uses all these very simple elements very effectively. So early on, we establish one of these puppies loves to watch TV a little bit too much, and he gets sucked in, and he's not paying attention. So then we get kidnapped. They're trying to escape. One of these puppies just keeps getting sucked back to the TV. Mm-hmm. It's like a little itty-bitty detail, but because of the nature of the plot, it creates that tension. You talked about the soot, and they're black and they're white, therefore you can do the soot thing, and then it starts to wash off. Like, it's a little detail that is so powerful in the moment. Other one that stuck out to me is the movie's willingness to use silence. When they think the puppy's dead, the movie goes silent in the hands, and you think, what would they do in a modern day blind? We'd have the swelling music, and it would really overplay it. And this one is just says, like, let's sit in the moment where you think, did this movie just kill off a puppy in the first 10 minutes?
Yeah,
and so
that's true.
And it's this very effective moment where you pause and hold your breath until it breathes. And the whole movie just has that type of simplicity in the execution that's just so effective because it's the right details for this particular story.
Yeah, and it starts out so charmingly with the whole meeting of Roger and Anita and Pongo and Purdy. It's so cute. And then they have the Twilight Bark, which is so much fun. And I think the side characters are done very well, like with Sergeant Tibbs. He's like the hero of the movie, saving the puppies. So he's really fun. The Colonel, all of that. It just makes for a really satisfying picture.
What was interesting, another one interesting, is when you think about the way that stories are told so differently now than they were before, that this one, while it has multiple characters in these different arcs, it's like done without any cross-cutting or intercutting with it. So you like follow like this love story, and then it transitions to the puppies. And then when the puppies get taken, and then we follow the Bark across town. And so it's all linear following this story. And so different sections will have like different stars in it with these dogs that were just now being introduced. But in effect, like it feels right. It doesn't feel like, who are these characters? Where'd this come from? Because you're following the story in a way that's interesting and different from the way stories are normally told.
Yeah, it almost has a structure like a play in a way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But it works. And that's why I don't think the live action works as well, because the puppies can't talk. And so you lose like tons of characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I don't want to agree too much on that because it would violate what I actually said in my ranking. But I mean, I think there's some truth to that, like the ability to have these dogs talking when you follow their barks across town. That just does not have the same feel when the dogs can't talk and have a personality. In which case, this key element, some of the charm that ties it together, it's not replaced by anything that is better.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say that Roger and Anita are two of Disney's best romantic couples. I think they're really fun.
Once again, just simple little cuteness. Doesn't have to be overdone. Doesn't have this big dramatic backstory. Just two dog owners and charming. Two dog owners that cross paths and have a nice little chemistry to them. So Rotten Tomatoes has 98%. You wonder who's that 2%? Who's the person that was like 101 Dalmatians? Who's that person? I had it number one. Bet it number one. Pretty sure everyone's going to agree on this one. What were you about to say?
I was just going to say, oddly enough, Walt Disney didn't like it at all. So that's the 2%.
That's him right there. He got 2% on it, too. It's like, Walt Disney's review. Oh, better give that one 2%. Give it a little extra kick. But, that's interesting. What was his criticism?
He didn't like it wasn't artistic. He didn't like the Xerox method. He thought it was cheap. And that was his biggest thing because he was an artist, at heart. So.
Yes, that makes sense.
I like it.
Besides that Walt Disney character, whoever he was, we all agree it comes in at number one. Rachel, where can we find you on the internet once again?
Yeah, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check all of that out, and at the Hallmarkies podcast. And
as I mentioned before, we've done a couple of these videos before, one on all of the Aladdin movies, including the direct-to-video ones, as well as with the Lion King. You can check those out somewhere around there. I don't know what the screen's going to look like, but you can check them out there. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining me, Rachel, and keep talking movies too much.
Bye, everyone.